You're tuned in to Ask the Master Auto Technician. Car questions? Get answers right now. Call 850-763-0555.
James Auto Center, we fix it right, guaranteed. Beep, 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 yeah.
All right, I'm back again. Just James Morris. Karen Shulman was just on that last segment. She was talking about our loss of liberty, and I happen to see a quote here. Liberty is lost through complacency and subservient mindset. When we accept or even welcome automobile checkpoints, random searches, mandatory identification cards, and paramilitary police on our streets, we have lost a vital part of our American heritage. America was born of protest, revolution, and mistrust of government. Subservient societies neither maintain nor deserve freedom for long. Anybody know who that quote might come from? He's actually running for president. Hopefully we'll see him on August 26th in Tampa. That's Ron Paul said that. He's been saying that for a long time out there, and a lot of people would sit there and blow him off as a kooky old man, but the kooky old man's got some very good ideas of what's happening in our society. But we're going to get back to cooling systems right now. And cooling systems, I talked about radiator caps. That's something that can actually cause a car to boil, make you smell antifreeze without needing to smell. That something can be prevented in causing a lot of problems. And when you get a cap that won't hold pressure, of course you get steam because it starts to boil when you don't want it to boil. And that's where steam erosion comes in. Had a perfect example of steam erosion on a car that came in this week. Had a 5-year-old car, 6-year-old car, I apologize. 6-year-old car comes in with a radiator tank cracked. They don't understand why the tank has been cracked because the radiator was changed about 3 years ago. And hoses were changed and all that. And I looked at it and I said, well, that's usually an indication of steam erosion where the crack is. That's what I've normally seen in the past. They said, well, steam erosion, what causes that? I said, normally due to a system that will not hold pressure or has a combination of the wrong mixture of 50-50 mixture of antifreeze. Maybe it's got more water than antifreeze, or there's a reason the boiling point is dropped. Remember, when you pressurize a system and it's got a 50-50 mixture of antifreeze, the boiling point's around 240, 244, somewhere in that general area on a pressurized system. If you cannot pressurize a system, and it's only got 1 or 2 pounds of pressure or no pressure, there's a hole in it someplace where you can't hold any pressure at all. The boiling point's now been dropped around 220, 225, somewhere in that general area of a 50-50 mixture. And remember, cooling fans don't come on most vehicles to 225. So long before the fan comes on to cool it down, it's already boiling. You can't get it can't get any hotter to make the cooling fans come on. It reaches around 221, 222. It starts to boil and evaporate, run hot, and next thing you know, you're sitting there with the car engine pegged out. You can't understand why the cooling fans won't come on because it won't get any hotter to make the electronic signal make the cooling fans come on. That's a pretty basic premise that you can just really an easy system to figure out. Changing your radiator caps every couple of years when you change your coolant is a wonderful, marvelous thing to do. And now, just because you change the new cap doesn't mean the cap is good. They should always be tested before they've been put on. Even ones that come from the dealerships. I bought brand new radiator caps that wouldn't hold but 2 or 3 pounds of pressure. And then I put brand new ones. I put used ones. I've checked used ones that are 2, 3, 4 years old that work just fine. So you got to be, cooling system caps don't always fail, but they do seem to lose their ability to hold the correct amount of pressure. If it's a 16-pound cap, normally after a couple of years they lose 2 to 4 pounds of ability to hold. So we dropped it down to 10 to 12 pounds. Can cause a problem. Can cause steam erosion, can cause you to tear things up prematurely, can cause your transmission to run hotter than it should be because the cooling fans won't come on. It doesn't do its job. So that's why it's so important just to change the radiator cap every couple years and change your coolant every couple years. Whether you have the extended life antifreeze that's supposed to be good for 5 years or 150,000 miles, or the old green antifreeze, the old silica-based antifreeze that we, years and years ago we've always used, ethylene glycol-based. Well, I should say that because all antifreeze is usually ethylene glycol-based. It just happens to be what we call the green Prestone type antifreeze that we used years and years ago. That seems, got to make sure you use the right antifreeze. That's the other thing. Just don't be using, that's another mistake a lot of do-it-yourselfers do, is they put in, quote, universal coolant. Now, universal coolant, I used to think was the greatest thing since sliced bread. As you start watching actual real use, what it does, if you don't have the laboratories like Mark Sarlo had when he was working at Southwest Regional Research and Development, you have to kind of actually watch what's going on. They can actually do it in their laboratory, speed things up under controlled circumstances, and by adding things to it to make this problem happen, where I don't have that ability. I can just see what happens when we put extended life antifreeze universal coolant in 1, 2, 3 years down the road. What happens? Started to find out after 2 or 3 years, problems started to raise their head. So we said, oh, I got to stop that. Cannot use universal antifreeze. So that's something that I used to say was good, but come to find out, you can change. You can actually say, hey, I found out that wasn't the right thing. It'll get you by, it'll work, but in the long run, it's not recommended. So the proper antifreeze that your manufacturer called for is what you should put in. If your manufacturer called for just regular green antifreeze, silica-based antifreeze, it's not so critical. You can actually just go buy it at any parts store. It doesn't really matter. But if your manufacturer ordered you to make sure, say you have a Honda, I'll be honest with you, if it's a Honda, you got to put Honda fluid back in it. If you got a Toyota, you got to put Toyota fluid back in it. If you got a Harley Davidson water-cooled engine like I have, you got to put Harley Davidson. Even though it looks like Dexcool, it's not. Did a little research on it. It's completely different. It's reformulated. The only thing that's similar is the color. Same thing with Kia. Same thing with all the manufacturers, especially BMW and Mercedes. Too many people don't want to pay that $30 and $40 a gallon antifreeze, which car takes 2 to 3 gallons of this stuff. They don't want to put it in their car, so they go get a $19.95. Oh, so I shouldn't say that $19.95. They go get a $49.95 drain and fill of antifreeze, and what they end up doing is they do more damage when they do that, but they think they're doing what's right for their car. And that's a big mistake. It really is. If you're going to do a coolant exchange, if you're going to do a drain and fill, if that's all you can afford to do, or you say, well, that's all I'm going to do, I'm not going to take my car to a shop. Here's what you're going to do. If you're going to do a drain and fill, the maximum you're going to change, if a drain and fill, is between 1/4 to 1/3 of the car's cooling system. And that's all you're going to be able to change. Most V8 engines hold around 4 gallons, total, a 50-50 mixture. And if I've had people come in, I just want to drain and fill. Well, I'm not going to be able to help you out. Well, why that? Well, you're not really going to be accomplishing anything. You really need, what you end up doing is putting this new fluid in there, and then it kind of freshens up the old fluid in there, but it can cause more problems down the road. So if you're going to do it right. Change all the fluid, exchange it, exercise, not exercise like exorcist, but exercise the coolant by exercising the thermostat. Now we're talking about the thermostat again. As the thermostat opens up, allowing the hot coolant to go out into a container to be disposed of properly, new fluid is taking its place. Most diesels hold around 6 gallons. If you got a V8 diesel engine around on a truck, around 6 gallons, or a big engine like on some of these towing packages out there. Very, very important that you look at how much coolant a system holds. You can find that out by going to the shop and say, okay, I need to do a coolant exchange. Go to your database system and look how many quarts this system holds. We were looking at a Toyota the other day with I want to say, was it a 5.7? I believe it was a 5.7 engine in it, and it held 14 quarts of coolant. And it was, and it is a gasoline engine, 14 quarts. So that's a lot of fluid that's got to be changed in there. And the fluid we bought was pre-mixed, so you can't just, and it came from Toyota, we couldn't just go out and say, okay, I'm going to just get regular antifreeze and add that to it. That would have destroyed the system in about 15 to 20,000 miles. The customer would have had a problem. So we don't want to do that. So we want to do it right. And that's why it's so important that on cooling systems, use the right antifreeze. Change the cap every couple of years. It doesn't hurt to do that. Or at least have the cap checked. If you're going to be, I don't want to change my cap, well, have someone that can pressurize the cap. If you've got a 16-pound cap and it's only holding 12 to 13, maybe 14 pounds, you got a problem. Get you another cap. So what's a cap going to cost you? 10 to 25 bucks? It's worth the money. Some of them are expensive, maybe 25 bucks. Most of them are around 10, 12 bucks. Get a good cap, a good OE style cap. Don't be putting these caps on here that aren't made for the vehicle. It's very, very important you put the original equipment style on there. Now, if you got an older model car, you can get by with the old brass copper radiators. You can get by with an aftermarket radiator. But a lot of these newer cars that have the screw-on caps, you've really got to put OE caps on them. And I can talk about that on the same type caps going on gas tanks. Put the OE cap on a gas tank too as well. But that's another story. We'll talk about that. But we're talking about the cooling systems, mistakes that do-it-yourselfers do. Radiator caps need to be changed. The right coolant needs to be put in there. And never, ever reuse your old coolant. I have a lot of people that come in and say, my water pump's leaking. Let me save my antifreeze. And I agree, it's good to catch your antifreeze and dispose of it properly. But once it gets exposed to the atmosphere, I'm serious, once you've let it out, once it's run down out of the hose or run out of the car or the vehicle, and it's been heated and cooled lots of times before, and now you exposed it to the atmosphere, a lot of the goodies inside, their little vitamins inside the system are depleted. And now you take that and you put it back into the system. Well, it's been contaminated probably by running over and it's picked things up it shouldn't have picked up. Now you're putting that back in. Can't do that. So that's another mistake. When we get back, we're going to talk more about cooling system mistakes that you can avoid and your technician can avoid, and you can help them keep your car lasting forever, or at least into the tires, or at least into the seat wears out. Hey, this is James Morris. You got a car question, pick up that phone dial, 850-763-0555 with your automotive question. Let's see if we can point you in the right direction. We'll be right back.
James Auto Center, we fix it right, guaranteed. Beep, 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 yeah.